thank you all for coming this morning. We have a challenge, which I think all the speakers have, in that the topics are big and the time is short. So I'm going to go rather quickly, and we're going to come to a point pretty soon where I'm going to ask you to help me out a little bit to get through the program. We're at a very exciting time. I think you've all picked up, even though this is the first morning of the conference, that there's a tremendous amount of energy in the air here, and rightfully so. I would also call out to you, we're here to talk about what's important in thinking about a locker partner, that the locker itself is really the smallest piece of the solution. It's the physical means by which you have a handoff of goods from you to your customer. But without the rest of the infrastructure and without the rest of the information flow, it's of very little value. I would also contend that this is a very fluid time. This is transformational technology, and we're all sensing that it's about to happen. But the reality is that most of it hasn't really happened big yet. Almost all of the presentations that we see and all of the data that we read are about pilots. And it's very encouraging, it's very exciting, but there's a big difference between doing 1 or 2 sites and doing 50 sites or 100 sites or 1,000 sites. And as you think about integrating this into your whole workflow, into your whole business process, and the work that has to go on, that's very important as we go through the conversation. I also want to talk for a minute about what is this whole thing called click and collect. Many of you are familiar, maybe all of you are familiar, with the tale of the 3 blind men that were asked to describe an elephant. And they took the first one to the tusks, and he described that long, smooth, pointy thing on the front of the elephant. And the next one was taken to the side of the elephant and just felt the skin and talked about how rough and textured it was and the hair coming out of it. And the third to the tail and described the round, long tail. Well, when we think about click and collect, a lot of it is your perspective. So what is really this click and collect thing? Is it a network of deployed lockers that are out and about? Is it independent? Is it proprietary? Is it managed by a courier? Is it an extension of omni-channel retail? Is it in the store? Is it near the store? Is it an extension of the store at specialized locations? Is it offering next-day service? Is it offering same-day pickup? Is it offering 1-hour pickup? I had a conversation with a very large retailer recently. He said, well, our data says that the customer is going to expect 5-hour or will accept 5-hour delivery. And I asked him, well, what was your questionnaire? And the questionnaire was second day, next day, same day, or 5 hours. I said, if you had asked 1 hour, they would have checked 1 hour. And the point that I want to make here is that the target is moving very quickly. We've seen the adoption curve of mobile. We've seen the adoption curve of e-commerce, and we're starting to see it with click and collect. And the point is going to be that the standard of yesterday is not the standard of today, and the standard of tomorrow is going to be even higher. So as you plan your programs, especially those of you that have scale, are going to be thinking very differently about what you need to do, and you don't want to be looking backwards. This is all being driven by what customer expectations are, and I'm glad I'm on the first morning of the program, but I think we're going to hear over and over for these 2 days. Customers want to buy what they want to buy, the way they want to buy it, when they want to buy it. They want to receive the goods in the way they want to receive them, when and where they want to receive them, and they want to pay for them in the way they want to receive them. That's just the fact. I want it now is the mandate of the day. And there's some other data that I think is very important to keep in mind with this, and this is, I believe, abundantly clear worldwide with all the surveys that have been done, all the studies that have been done. Customers want free shipping. They want it now, but they don't want to pay for that service. So that begs a bigger question, which is, what is the business case? And how do you make it work? A lot of pilots are funded just because they're pilots, but if we're going to roll out and we're going to put out 100 or 1,000 or tens of thousands of locker systems, we better have a solid business case, and we better have that all worked out. And that's something that is more than just the physical lockers. The other thing that I think we need to be very mindful of as we talk about this is that the consumer values his or her time more than anything today, and that's going to do nothing but go up. So the more ways that we can make it convenient for customers to get what they want, where they want it, the better we're going to be and take out the friction of that transaction. So we talk about the physical world and we talk about the digital world. Click and collect comes at the intersection of both of those, and that's where I live. That's where I've lived for a long time. Click and collect really is nothing new. I did my first click and collect projects in 1998, and at that point the internet was out there, but it really wasn't widely adopted and widely spread. Many of the programs that you hear about today, particularly the more mature ones in Europe, started in the early internet boom in 2000, 2001, and they're still at a modest stage of rollout. But so why is today different? Today is different because we really have come to the Internet of Things, and the technology and the zeitgeist, if you will, of the consumer has all come together to make this possible, and the technology is more friendly, integration with other systems is more friendly, and we're at that time. But this goes beyond the Internet of Things, and it's really the Internet of the flow of goods and material, the flow of people, and the flow of payments, and that all comes together to make click and collect. So when we think about this, it's about the movement of things, it's about the delivery and receipt of things, and it's about the transfer of ownership from you to your customer and the payment for those things. Now, this is our headquarters of Apex in Mason, Ohio. I just want to take a minute and talk a little bit about where I'm coming from so you'll be able to interpret the rest of my remarks. Our headquarters are in Mason, which is outside of Cincinnati. We have our UK operation is our EU headquarters, so we also have Customer Experience Center in Germany outside of Frankfurt, one in Bogota, Colombia, and one in just outside of Sydney. We are an integrated provider, so we do everything from designing the electronics and the firmware to the hardware to the software, and we implement on a very large scale. To that point, we've done over 1 billion transactions now in our Trajectory Cloud. We've deployed at 15,000 companies in 42 countries on 6 continents. Millions of transactions occur every day in real time between our devices and the Trajectory Cloud. We also, I think, bring one other thing that's important for you to consider about the provider you would choose, which is we deal in mission-critical applications. And what does that mean? It means we're held to a very high standard. If we don't deliver, if our system doesn't work, software, hardware, everything, and the customer doesn't get the experience they want, factories shut down. Ambulances don't go out on a run. Lives are lost. Healthcare isn't provided. Airplanes don't fly. Trains don't run. So we've learned that discipline, and we bring that discipline forward into click and collect. And there's one other mantra that I want to share with you, which I think is important, whoever you would choose, but we express it this way, which is it needs to be easy to use, easy to implement, and easy to afford. And we do that. That's the filter that everything we do goes through, or we don't do it. So I'm going to cover some criteria, and then I'll go through them in a little bit more detail. But these are the areas that we think are important to consider as you consider a locker partner. The first is the strategic planning and vision process. It's not just about slapping a locker here or there and how many compartments are in a standard off-the-shelf locker, but what do you really need, and what size does it need to be, and what types of products are you going to have, and does it need to go outdoors or indoors, and all types of environmental considerations need to be thought of. And then what is the workflow and the strategy that you're going to have to deploy it, what has to happen on the system side to make the information flow along with the transactions. The next is the domain knowledge of your partner. The third is scalability. How repeatable is this, and what does it take to implement on the scale that you wish to implement on? The third is data security, and data security becomes number one in many cases. We've all heard of the horror stories of recent times and data compromise, and this becomes paramount in understanding how data is processed from that transaction at the locker to the cloud and back and integrated with your systems. The third is the implementation support, or the next is implementation support. The flexibility and adaptability of your partner. Are you dealing with just off-the-shelf product, or can you customize? Is the solution malleable to what your needs are and your application is? The next is the COTS, or we call custom off-the-shelf product to custom product. And that means even the visibility to the business model. What is the affordability of the solution and how can it be implemented? And then next we have uptime, maintenance, and what requirements there are to sustain that system, to maintain it in the field. Then we have the software side of things. Where does this support come from that's going to integrate these systems and that's going to develop new applications or APIs that coordinate with your systems? Is that in-house? Is that outsourced? Is that some third party that just contracts once in a while to do those kind of things? And then finally, business intelligence. What kind of analytics and what kind of information can come out of the system? How easy is it to get and how robust? So this is the part where I'm going to ask you to help me out a little bit. I'm going to throw up some slides, but I'm going to really not read them. I'll let you read them. You can do that, and I'll just say a few words about each one so that we can finish up on time and hopefully have a few minutes for some questions as well. So when we think about the strategic planning, it really goes down to the most granular level. You have to think about both the big picture and you have to think about the details of the implementation. The devil is always in the details, and this is a transformation. The speakers before me, I think, rightly said that you have to change the way your organization perceives click and collect and the way they respond to it. And the holy grail of all of this is to be able to understand what you're capable of promising to your customer and then fulfilling that promise. If we say it's going to be there in an hour, it better be there in an hour. If we say it's going to be there next day, it better be there. And guess what? It better work when the customer gets to that locker. So if you break the promise at any point in the chain, you've totally defeated the purpose of doing this, and you alienated your customer rather than bringing them closer to you. The next area to think about is domain knowledge. There's a lot of theoretical discussion going on. There's a lot of partial knowledge, knowing one piece of the domain, knowing something about logistics, knowing something about courier services, knowing something even about locker systems. But you should think carefully about what your partner needs to provide to you and make sure that they have not just some textbook knowledge or they've done one or two, but have they done a lot. And as I mentioned to you, we've implemented it over 15,000 companies, including 400 of the Fortune 1000 in mission-critical places. So that's just a benchmark. The next thing I would talk to you about is the scalability. If you have a large play, there's not going to be an infinite amount of time to make it. This is a vacuum that's going to be filled. We're still on this side of the tipping point. I think we can all agree to that, but the tipping point is going to come soon and no one knows exactly what day or what hour that will come. So I think we can agree that in 2017, 2018, we won't be on this side of the tipping point. We'll be on the other side. And you're not going to have the same opportunity available to you that you do today. So that means that once you do decide what you're going to do, once you've gone through the strategic planning, once you've chosen your partner, you have to have someone that can execute and execute big. And in our case, we've deployed thousands of units in a single month. We can deploy custom product in a very short period of time if that's necessary. So those are kind of things you need to think about. The next area that I want to touch on is the area of data security. And it starts with having no Microsoft Windows on site. And that's a very important distinction. Most of the solutions that we've seen out in the marketplace somewhere, somehow have a computer buried into the machine. And it's no better than Windows. And that's what we learned along the way. See, lessons learned from a billion transactions. I started doing this with DOS computers connected to the machines. And Windows requires a lot of support. That's time, that's cost, but it's also secure function. or security question. It also, in terms of deployment, if you're talking about remote sites, it has a lot to do with the acceptance of the IT security people, the network security people, and your customers. By not having a Windows PC, it makes it a whole lot easier. Also, I would point out that in that type of a model, you have a replication of the data, so the transaction is happening locally at the device and then replicating to the cloud. So you need to think about that and whether that's really what you want, or a native cloud solution that's secure, that has encryption, that's using HTTPS. If you're using payment systems at the site, if it's really an advanced stocking, and that's a model you need to think about. Are you delivering to an order, or are you proactively stocking and having a transaction occur at the site? Are you PCI compliant? Do you have P2PE encryption in all the data? And then finally, who owns the data in that model? Who owns the customer data, and what purposes can it be used for? The next thing to think about is implementation and support. So in that area, there's a buried cost, both in time, effort, and money in implementation. So what does it take? We employ something we call connect and go technology. You plug it into power, you plug it into the internet, or have it wirelessly connect to the internet, or we do things in mines in Western Australia, for example, where there's satellite communication to the internet. So we have to have a way to get to the internet. Beyond that, that's all there is. You level it and you're done. Now that's a very important comment that I just made too about implementation, is what does it take really to secure that device and to make sure that it's going to function? And this is where the design and engineering comes in also to the physical device, because you have a lot of doors on a locker. And anybody that's ever hung a door knows that if it's not right, or if it's not strong enough, it starts to sag. So what are cycles? What's the availability of that function and reliability of that function over time? I was talking with someone earlier this morning, and they said, well, I think we can just find some cheap Chinese lockers. And I think there are some folks that have tried that, and I'd like to see how that's going, and I'd like to see how that's going a year from now, and 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. So that becomes an important consideration as well. Flexibility and responsiveness, and that comes into how is the business model structure, that comes into how the business model rolls out, who owns the lockers. One of the things we found is that there's an evolution from buying and owning lockers to leasing them, and now what we're seeing great interest in, and we're very excited about, that we offer, is a subscription model, where you don't have to buy the lockers, we'll just provide them on a subscription as a service. So it becomes a true operating expense rather than a capital expense. And again, if you're talking pilot quantities, it may look one way, but if you're talking rollout quantities, that may be very desirable as well. And then what kind of support is there, or what kind of flexibility is there. We talked about commercial off-the-shelf product, which you can see a lot of in our exhibit if you choose to come down there, but we also do a lot of custom work, and we do it all. So I don't mean that we have contractors or third parties we work with. We have mechanical engineers, we have electronics engineers, firmware engineers, we own the manufacturing facilities, we produce custom to-spec product for specialized requirements. And then uptime. And this is very important to think about. I've been hearing a lot of talk in the industry that 95% uptime is an acceptable standard. One of the articles I read recently said, well, we've just achieved a new benchmark, 98% uptime. Well, that sounds pretty good when you look at it in isolation, but that's not anywhere near serving your customers the way they need to be served, in our opinion. 95% uptime is 8 hours downtime per week. What 8 hours is that? Is that the 8 hours when your customer is there? Is that the 8 hours when they need it the most? Is that 2 weeks of 8 hours and then some good uptime? 98% uptime is 3 hours downtime per week. We run consistently 99.95% uptime, which means 5 minutes per week, and that's not good enough for us. We're moving towards 5 nines, 99.99, which gives you 6 minutes a year. And that's where we think we'll be in the next 12 to 18 months. I'm going to wrap up quickly. Data exchange is very important, and having a company partner that understands how to integrate with your systems, with your warehouse management, with your e-commerce, with your POS systems and other systems to make the data flow seamlessly through APIs, mobile apps, and so on. That's all core expertise that you should look at. And then finally, what's available in terms of business intelligence and analytics. I know we're pressed for time, but my colleague Kimberly Carroll's in the back. If anyone would like a copy of these slides, just give her your business card. We'd be happy to send them to you, and then I'll wrap up and turn it over for any questions. Thank you.